What's up, everybody? Corey Hughes, Bloody History. Welcome back. Today we're going to be tackling John Armstrong's file on Billy Joe Lord. Billy Joe Lord allegedly accompanied Oswald or was on the same ship that Oswald took when he left the United States. So let's just hop right into it. Urgent, 11/29/63. To director in SACS Dallas and Minneapolis. Assassination of John F. Kennedy, Dallas, Texas, November 22nd last. Acquaintance of Oswald. Mrs. Leila K. Lord, 2403 Holloway Street, Midland, Texas, advised S.A. Roy Dahl that in October 59, her son, Billy Joe Lord, Air Force serial number 18649720, who is presently stationed USAF at Minot, North Dakota, went to France to school. A trip was made aboard a Likes Brothers steamship. Lee Harvey Oswald was on this same ship and shared a cabin with Lord. Lord said Oswald was an atheist. Minneapolis at Minot, North Dakota. Interview of Billy Joe Lord for all information he can give concerning his contact with Oswald. No FD 302 being submitted. All right. Now it seems as though we have like what appears to be like a official case report. It says type of case. Looks like, I can't read that. Forensic something research, PRE something ETIV. It's not predictive research. I can't read what the fuck that says. Title or caption, Lee Harvey Oswald, investigation made at Austin, Texas, February 27th and 28th, 1964. Investigation made by Kenneth J. Wiseman. Synopsis, Billy Joe Lord, Airman, 3C, interviewed at Bergstrom Air Force Base, Austin, Texas, and advises that he has no knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald's ultimate travel destination. Introduction, references made to SAIC, Special Agent in Charge, Weisheet's memorandum, report dated 2/25/64, and Chief's memorandum dated 1/29/64, requesting that Billy Joe Lord be interviewed regarding his and Harvey Lee Oswald's trip to France aboard the SS Marion Likes. Please note, it says clearly Harvey Lee Oswald, not Lee Harvey Oswald. It says it up in the synopsis of Harvey Lee Oswald's ultimate travel destination. Remember, John Armstrong said that one of them went by Lee Oswald and the other one went by Harvey Oswald. And so whenever I see these little things here, these are they mistakes? Were the names switched by accident? I don't know. It says requesting that Billy Joe Lord be interviewed regarding his and Harvey Lee Oswald's trip to France aboard the SS Marion Likes. General inquiries. On February 27th, 1964, a check of the Austin Police Department files failed to reveal the name of Billy Joe Lord. On the same date, a check of the criminal files at the Texas Department of Public Safety was made. However, the subject was not on file. On February 27th, 64, by telephone, Billy Joe Lord was located through the base locator, and arrangements were made to interview this subject February 28th of 64. On February 28th, 1964, interviewed First Lieutenant John C. Mateer, Mateer, Administrative Officer, 340th Bomb Wing, Combat Defense Squadron, Bergstrom Air Force Base, who advised that Billy Joe Lord was a new airman in the squadron. However, he was considered honest, trustworthy, and of good character. Personal interview. On February 28th, 1964, interviewed Airman 3C Billy Joe Lord at Bergstrom Air Force Base. He's described as an American white male, 22 years of age, 5'10", 155 pounds. Brown hair, blue eyes, ruddy complexion, small build, date of birth, August 31st, 41. P.O.B. Midland, Texas. Place of birth, that's Air Force serial number AF18649720. His parents are W.B. Lord and Leila K. Lord, who reside at 2403 Holloway Street, Midland, Texas. He has a sister, Mrs. Catherine E. Castleberry, who also resides at the above address. This subject is currently attached to the 340th Bomb Wing, Combat Defense Squadron, Bergstrom Air Force Base, Austin, Texas. He advised that he attended the Midland High School, Midland, Texas, from September 56 to May of 59. Airman Lord advised that after graduating from Midland High School in 1959 with financial assistance from his parents, he made plans to continue his education in France. During August of 59, he made application for a passport and on or about September 15th, 59, departed Midland, Texas, via train for New Orleans, Louisiana, arriving there about September 17th, 59. He states that he spent the next 3 days touring the city of New Orleans and made several trips to the ticket office of the Likes lines. He states that he registered and stayed in a hotel on Canal Street, name unknown, that was near the city library. He states that he did visit the library several times during his stay in the city. During this period, the subject states that he did not know Harvey Lee Oswald. On September 20th, 59, he boarded freighter SS Marion Likes at New Orleans and was assigned a cabin that he shared with Harvey Lee Oswald. The subject states that this was his first meeting of Harvey Lee Oswald. He further stated that he shared this cabin with Harvey Lee Oswald for the duration of the trip to France. Airman Lord advised that Harvey Lee Oswald preceded him aboard the SS Marion Likes and was unpacking his belongings upon arrival. No other persons were present. After an introduction by the ship's officer, the two were left alone. The subject advised that Oswald was unfriendly, standoffish, and that the two of them didn't hit it off. He stated that during the voyage they did not discuss governments or any individuals in government. He stated that they did discuss religion to quite an extent, and that Oswald continuously stated that there was no supreme being or God, and that anyone with intelligence would recognize that there was only matter. Airman Lord stated that it was his understanding that Oswald had purchased a ticket to the British Isles, probably to the port of Southampton. He also stated that Oswald, he said, that he was going to travel around in Europe, that he might attend school in Sweden or Switzerland if he had sufficient funds, that he was recently discharged from the Marines, that he had worked in the radar field in the Marines, that his mother worked in a drugstore in Fort Worth, Texas, that he was bitter about her having to work in a drugstore and having a hard time, that he was just going on a trip to tour Europe and maybe attend school, and that he would probably return to the United States to work. He gave no indication of his ultimate destination. This subject further stated that besides Oswald and himself, there were two other passengers aboard the SS Marion Likes. They were a retired U.S. Army colonel and his wife. However, Lord could not recall their names. We might get to it in this report here, but if Ergo and Jim, if you guys could try to dig for this colonel who was on the SS Marion Likes and his wife, that'd be great. Airman Lord stated that the four passengers usually ate their meals together in the ship's officers' mess. However, the retired colonel and his wife did not associate much with Harvey Lee Oswald. Airman Lord stated that he shared a closet with Oswald. However, he did not observe anything out of the ordinary among Oswald's possessions. The subject stated that Oswald had a few clothes and that one time Oswald showed him his passport. He stated that at no time during their discussions did Oswald indicate any knowledge regarding firearms, nor did he indicate that he might defect to Russia. He stated that to the best of his knowledge, Oswald received no correspondence or communications while aboard the ship, nor did he associate with any of the ship's crew. He stated that Oswald never mentioned any contacts or friends in Europe. Passage aboard the ship SS Marion Likes amounted to approximately $200. He stated that Oswald appeared to be a normal, healthy individual, mentally all right, but extremely cynical. He further stated that on October 5th, 1959, they arrived at La Palisse, France, and that he disembarked from the SS Marion Likes and never saw or heard from Oswald again. He stated that Oswald was not in their cabin upon his departure, and that he did not know if Oswald went ashore at this port. He stated that he attended the Institute of French Studies at the city of Tours, province of Touraine, France, from October 59 to February of 62, intermittently, while auditing courses at the University of Poitiers, Tours, France, and at Sorbonne, University of Paris, France. He also advised that he returned to the U.S. aboard the French ship Liberty in June 1960. He departed the United States February 1961 en route to France and returned to the United States in 62, traveling both voyages aboard the Queen Mary. Disposition: the case is closed in the Austin offices with submission of this report. Attachments: Chief Office, copies of Billy Joe Lord's passport, application, and photograph. Other passengers aboard the SS Marion. Then it cuts to another page here. It seems to be a break and a missing page, perhaps. Well, I have 2 pages here marked page 3, but they're not duplicates, I don't believe. Oh, yes, they are. Never mind. I hate when they fucking do that shit. All right, next page, Department of the Air Force. This is a letterhead memo. Subject: Billy Joe Lord. Date of birth: 21st of August 41. A3C AF 18649-720, Bergstrom Air Force Base, Texas. To Mrs. J. Meyer Cole, Special Agent in Charge, Federal Bureau of Investigation, San Antonio, Texas. Dear Mr. Cole, this office is in receipt of a request from the Commander Bergstrom AFB, Texas, for a personnel security investigation of subject for clearance purposes. In reviewing the DD Form 398 Statement of Personal History, which was accomplished by subject, it was noted that under item 17 of such form, subject made a statement to the effect that he had been a passenger on the same ship with the accused presidential assassin Lee Harvey Oswald and had talked to Oswald. Subject also noted that this information was known to the FBI. No further details were indicated. Subject was assigned to Minot Air Force Base, Minot, North Dakota, until his transfer to Bergstrom Air Force Base, Texas, in February of 1964. The above furnished is a matter of possible interest, and to confirm oral discussion of this matter with the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, William T. Brooking, of your office on 19 May 64. Signed Colonel Charles King. Okay, synopsis. Billy Joe Lord, airman, interviewed Bergstrom Air Force Base. Yep, that looks like another duplicated page. I hate when they do this shit. Okay, now we have do not destroy pending litigation. File number 8952. This looks like one of those FBI slips that has like someone's subject's background on it. Billy Joe Lord, 2403, Holloway in El Paso. It says Billy Joe Lord, a.k.a. Bill Lord, 2403 Holloway. Some handwritten notes. None of this is legible. There's a bunch of names here. Pamela Butler, Ken Potter. None of this is legible at all. This is just a bunch of dribble. I can't read any of it. Okay, next page. Assassination of President Kennedy, 11/22/63. Bureau Airtel enclosed the original 3 copies of a LHM reflecting interview of Billy Joe Lord. All right. So Billy Joe Lord, also known as Bill Lord, 2403 West Holloway, Midland, Texas, was interviewed on March 5th, 77 by special agents of the FBI. Mr. Lord advised he had written a letter to President Carter on February 2nd, 77, because he wanted to bring to President Carter's attention some of his thoughts on the assassination of President John Kennedy, and also to advise President Carter of some of the recent incidents which had happened to him and which he considered to be of suspicious or an unusual nature. He stated that he had nothing additional to report since he wrote the letter, nor had there been any further unusual or suspicious occurrences happened to him since that time. He clarified certain items which he mentioned in his letter to President Carter. The house which he referred to in his letter as having been broken into in his residence in Katsura, a suburb of Kyoto, Japan. He occupied this residence during the time that he was teaching in Japan. This incident occurred in September of 76, but he did not report it to the Japanese authorities. After he returned to Midland, Texas in August of 76, he went to work for the Reporter-Telegram, which is published in Midland, Texas. He's presently employed within that newspaper in the photo composition department, and his primary duties are proofreading the news and classified section of the newspaper. Shortly after returning to Midland, he received telephone calls from representatives of Reader's Digest magazine. They were Pamela Butler and Henry Hurt. They identified themselves as assistants to another Reader's Digest official named Edward J. Epstein. Mr. Epstein is apparently in charge of supervising a biography of Lee Harvey Oswald, which Reader's Digest plans to publish. Mr. Lord described Epstein as a critic of anyone who criticizes the Warren Commission report concerning the assassination of President Kennedy. Because of the posture of Mr. Epstein takes, Mr. Lord suspects he may be an agent for or otherwise connected with the CIA. Oh. Interesting observation, Mr. Lord. Mr. Lord stated he declined to be interviewed by either Pamela Butler or Henry Hurt concerning his prior acquaintance with Lee Harvey Oswald. Shortly after the first of the year, 1977, Hurt was in Midland, Texas, and contacted Mr. Lord. Mr. Lord had lunch with Mr. Hurt on 2 separate occasions, and on both occasions, Mr. Hurt wanted to interview him regarding Lee Harvey Oswald, but he, Lord, declined to be interviewed. after the occasion of the second luncheon, Mr. Hurt told him that he had contacted a Mr. Jim Bemis, Beamis, who was supposedly the chairman of the Republican Party in Virginia. Hurt told him that the reason he contacted Mr. Bemis was to find out from Bemis if he knew anyone who might be able to encourage Lord to talk to him. Mr. Hurt also told Mr. Lord that Bemis gave him the name of Jim Allison, who owns the Reporter Telegram, as well as the name of George Bush Jr., who was supposed to reside in the Midland, Texas area and is allegedly the son of George Bush, who was director of the CIA at that time. That's interesting. He's talking about W. Mr. Lord advised he is not acquainted with either George Bush Sr. or George Bush Jr. I never know. This is pointed out here. W is now hereby named in the JFK files. Totally, inconsequentially, but nonetheless, W is mentioned in these JFK files. I just thought that was kind of neat. Mr. Lord advised he's not acquainted with either George Bush Sr. or George Bush Jr., and he never met Mr. Allison. He stated that he's not been contacted by any of these individuals trying to encourage him to consent to an interview with Reader's Digest, nor has he been contacted by them for any reason. Mr. Lord advised that around the same time he started to get telephone calls from Pamela Butler and Henry Hurt. He also received a call from a Mr. Ken Potter of the National Enquirer, who also wanted to interview him regarding his association or knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald. Mr. Lord stated he also refused the interview with Mr. Potter. Mr. Lord stated that he had testified before the Warren Commission in June of 1964 regarding his association with Lee Harvey Oswald during a 2-week ocean voyage from New Orleans to Europe in 1959, and told the commission everything he knew about Oswald, and at that time his memory regarding that period was more accurate than it would be now. 13 years later, he stated that he was at a loss to understand why Reader's Digest was so insistent upon interviewing him, as his testimony before the Warren Commission has probably been published in the official commission report. Mr. Lord stated that in the latter part of 1976, his mother advertised her house for sale and advertised the sale of the Midland newspaper. He could not recall if his mother's telephone number was listed in the advertisement. Shortly after the ad was placed, 2 men came to look at the house, and after they heard his mother's name was Leela, one of the men mentioned to the other men that Leela was a Persian name. From that comment, he assumed these men were Iranians. He stated they both spoke English well with no discernible accent, and if they did have an accent, it was one that could not be identified. He stated he wanted to bring this matter to President Carter's attention in view of recent published statements that Iranian agents were best active in the United States. In regard to the comments in Mr. Lord's letter concerning the information that his mother's telephone had been tampered with, he stated this information had occurred shortly after his last meeting with Mr. Hurt. He stated that he did not find any signs of forced entry into his mother's house and was advised that the incident was not a violation of federal law and should be reported to the Midland Police Department. He stated he did call the Midland Police to report the fact his mother's phone had been tampered with, but the person he talked to told him to call the FBI, but he did not do so. Mr. Lord stated he had no threats made against him, but was advised that if he had any fear for his personal safety, he should contact the Midland Police Department. All right. And of course, fucking John Armstrong, this fucking guy, had to include all 3 copies of the goddamn of the fucking interview in this fucking thing, right? So, all right. Here we go. Moving on to SAC El Paso. Mr. Peelan and Mr. Gianquinto from the Director FBI. Assassination of John Kennedy. Enclosed are 2 copies of a letter and envelope received from the complainant, Billy Lord. Also enclosed are 2 copies of an FD 302 reflecting an interview with Billy Lord on 11/30/63, and 2 copies of an affidavit of a Billy Joe Lord as it appears from the Warren Commission report. El Paso Division is requested to contact the complainant, acknowledge his letter, and obtain full details regarding any additional information he wishes to provide regarding the allegations set forth in his letter of 2277. Bureau indices reveal that a Billy Joe Lord was in fact a cabin mate of Lee Harvey Oswald during a 2-week ocean voyage from New Orleans to Europe, which took place in 1959. During the course of your interview with the complainant, ensure that he is advised that any fears he may have for his personal safety should be referred to local authorities. If a review of El Paso indices should preclude interviewing the complainant, set forth your recommendations for not interviewing him in an appropriate communication. However, if the complainant is interviewed SULHM the results within 21 days. Airtel to SAC El Paso, assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Note, complainant in his letter of 2277 indicates that he was a cabin mate of Lee Harvey Oswald on an ocean voyage to Europe in 59. The complainant was interviewed by our Minneapolis division in November of 63 regarding said voyage, and the complainant additionally filed an affidavit with the Warren Commission. At no time did the complainant mention any of the allegations, specifically points 1 through 9, as set forth in his letter of 2277. This instructs El Paso to interview the complainant regarding any additional information he may have, and to SULHM the results. All right, it looks like we have now, from February 2nd, 77, it looks like it says, Dear my dear Mr. President. This is probably the letter he wrote to Jimmy Carter. Dear Mr. President, I have refrained from troubling you with the contents of this letter as long as I possibly could, but I have finally decided that a personal letter to you is in the end in your interest and in the country's interest. I'm simply transcribing notes which I set down about 2 weeks ago and which concern and must concern any leader of this country. I was Lee Oswald's cabin mate on the SS Marion Likes, which sailed from New Orleans to France in September-October 59. I've recently been the subject of surveillance, of harassment, of pressure tactics, and possibly of terror tactics. First in September, when I was teaching in Japan, someone broke into my house, rifled my papers, but stole nothing. I returned to the United States shortly thereafter. Back in Texas, I was suddenly and improbably the subject of a blitz of contacts by telephone from persons wanting to know urgently and insistently what I knew or remembered about Oswald. No one had asked me anything about Oswald since the time of the Warren Commission investigation 12 years ago. The blitz of calls came out of the blue. It was highly improbable, and after the break-in, I was suspicious. I stalled these people, who presented 2 major national publications. During this period of non-cooperation, I received another surprise, another first for me. 2 Iranian gentlemen appeared at my front door. My mother's house was up for sale, and they were prospective buyers. A small ad had been placed in the paper. The Iranians strode through the rooms in a very cursory, almost arrogant manner, paced off the front yard, and drove away. The sale of the house had been discussed on the telephone among family. A small ad had been placed. Only one other couple showed up to look at the house. Neither I nor my mother, who was 63, had ever received a visit from Iranian gentlemen before. One of the parties, which has blitzed me with telephone calls trying to persuade me to tell them what I know about Oswald, is engaged in a very costly project which allows them to locate, interview, monitor, and influence every single available person who ever knew Lee Oswald, and this just in advance of the new government investigation by the House Select Committee on Assassinations. I finally consented not to grant an interview, but to allow the publication's representative to explain their project to me in person. After a lunch with this researcher, I was told that if I had refused even to meet with him, pressure was in the offing through 2 Midland men, Mr. Jim Allison, publisher of the ultra-conservative Reporter Telegram, my employer, at a necessity and for the moment, and Mr. George Bush Jr. The researcher said he had asked an acquaintance, a Mr. Bemis, a chairman of the Republican Party in Virginia and owner of a string of hotels in that state, for help in persuading me to tell what I know about Oswald. After this revelation, and when I still refused to be interviewed, the publication's legman made an effort to purchase my knowledge about Oswald. I refused, and he left. Shortly thereafter, my mother discovered that her telephone had been tampered with. The casing around the dialing apparatus had been pulled out about 1/2 inch. It was so obvious as to be grotesque. But we cannot doubt that someone entered the house at a time when I was at work and my mother was away. She returned to the house, however, at an unaccustomed time. I have been in anguish for weeks, Mr. President, trying my best to laugh at my apprehensions and to see these events as fortuitous ones. Experience, common sense, and logic persuaded me otherwise. So I have been compelled to react to all this in the form of a statement, and it may shed some light on the reason for the intrusions into my life. Speaking as the man who spent more than 2 weeks in the same ship's cabin with Lee Oswald at the time of his 1959, quote, defection, end quotes, and speaking as a man who has been on the subject of the above described tactics of cowards, I offer the following considerations to the American people and to people everywhere. 1. It is CIA and FBI relations with Lee Oswald which have been covered up since November 22nd, 1963. 2. It is the CIA and FBI which have concealed and destroyed evidence of their relations with Oswald prior to November 22nd, 1963. 3. It is the CIA which has from the beginning fabricated or distorted certain Cuba-Oswald relations and certain Cuba-JFK relations as a smokescreen and decoy to conceal the CIA-Oswald relationship. 4. I can testify, and others can testify, that the CIA did not conduct a real investigation of the so-called defector Oswald in 1959. The CIA has long been concerned about witnesses who can testify to this oversight on their part. 5. They did not conduct a real investigation because Mr. Oswald was a bogus defector. 6. The CIA is concerned lest the knowledge that Oswald was a fake defector in 59 linking him to the CIA also link him with CIA on November 22nd, 1963. But there is an impressive body of evidence that CIA used and abused Oswald as late as November 63. 7. It is the CIA-Oswald relation and the FBI-Oswald relation which have necessitated the 13-year cover-up. 8. A necessary conclusion is that CIA and FBI elements in 1963 are suspect in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. 9. The assassination of John Kennedy has every appearance of having been our first American coup d'etat. Mr. President, as a man, a father, and a concerned citizen, I believe that you would act energetically also if you were in my shoes. I believe that you should be aware of the fact that one of your fellow citizens does not feel that he, his wife, and 3 children and his mother are safe in Midland, Texas. I conclude, Mr. President, by assuring you that I have the most enormous respect for you and the most hope-inspiring indications of your goodwill. As of your rare ability to lead the nation without flattery, you are quite simply the political light of this period in history. God be with you. I apologize for the crude and doubtless offensive tone of this letter. Sincerely, Bill Lord. Interesting, huh? Then we have the cover letter and all that stuff here. And now we have the affidavit of Billy Joe Lord before the Warren Commission. I, Billy Joe Lord, being duly sworn, say I am an airman, 3rd class in the United States Air Force, and I am in the 340th Bomb Wing Combat Defense Squadron at Bergstrom Air Force Base. I am 22 years old. The 340th Bomb Wing is just ringing in my head. Can one of you guys verify which bomber unit Jack Valenti was in so I don't have to go digging up the documents? 2. After graduating from Midland High School in 1959 with the financial assistance of my parents, I made plans to continue my education in France. During August of 59, I made an application for a passport. On or about September 15th, 59, I departed Midland, Texas via train for New Orleans, Louisiana, arriving there about September 17th, 59. I spent the next 3 days touring the city of New Orleans and making several trips to the ticket office of Likes. The cost passage aboard Marion Likes was about $200. I registered and stayed at La Salle Hotel on Canal Street, which was near the city library. I visited the library several times. During this period, I did not know Lee Harvey Oswald. On September 20th, 1959, I boarded the freighter SS Marion Likes at New Orleans. Upon boarding the ship, I was shown to my room. When I got there, Lee Harvey Oswald was already there and moving in. We were to share this room. I had never before seen nor heard of Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald and I shared this cabin for the duration of the trip to France, which was 14 days. In our first conversation, Oswald said that he was recently discharged from the Marines and that he had worked in some technical field while in the Marines. He indicated that he was somewhat bitter about the fact that his mother had to work in a drugstore in Fort Worth, Texas, and was having a hard time. He also said that he would be able to return to the United States to work. He gave no indication of his ultimate destination, although he said he was going to travel throughout Europe and possibly go to school in Switzerland. Also, in this first conversation, he discussed religion. Did not know why we discussed religion, except that possibly he noticed I had a Bible. He maintained that he could not see how I could believe in God in view of the fact that all science had disproved the existence of God and there was only matter. 5, after the first day, I hardly conversed with Oswald at all. Oswald was not outgoing, and neither was I. We were just not very friendly. Besides Oswald and myself, there were 2 other passengers, a colonel and his wife. Here we go. Army Colonel, Mr. and Mrs. George B. Church, Jr. George B. Church, Jr. All 4 passengers generally ate their meals together in the ship's officers' mess. Oswald ate most of his meals with us. I do not recall Colonel Church and his wife associating very much with Lee Harvey Oswald. I shared a closet with Oswald, but I did not notice anything out of the ordinary in his possessions. He did not show me his military identification card or his passport. Oswald did not indicate that he might defect to Russia. To the best of my knowledge, Oswald did not receive any correspondence or communications while aboard the ship, nor did he associate with any of the ship's crew. Oswald never mentioned any contacts or friends in Europe. 9. Lee Harvey Oswald appeared to be a normal, healthy individual, mentally but extremely cynical. On October 5th, 59, our ship arrived in France, and I disembarked from the ship. I never saw or heard from him again. It's my recollection that he departed from the ship subsequent to my departure. I had written to my mother about all the passengers. When Oswald defected, she sent me a newspaper post about it. 10. Oswald spent a great deal of his time during the trip on the deck. I do not recall him doing any reading. I do recall, however, that there was a radio speaker which received programs from Europe, and that Oswald and Colonel Church seemed to understand a little bit of the foreign languages that came over the speaker. I thought it was German, but I'm not sure. 11. I attended the Institute of French Studies at the city of Tours, province Touraine, France, from October 59 to February 62, intermittently, while studying courses at the University of Poitiers, Tours, France, at something's broken up here, something Paris, France. I returned to the U.S., and that's where that cuts off. All right, and it appears that we have one more. That was a very short statement, by the way, to the Warren Commission. Really not much there. I can kind of understand why everybody wants to interview the guy. So it looks like we have another FBI report here. This one from S.A. Douglas Smith, dated 11/30/63. So this seems to probably be the original contact of Billy Lord. Billy Joe Lord, U.S. Air Force number 18649720, assigned to the 862nd Combat Defense Squadron, Minot Air Force Base, rural North Dakota, advised as follows. He entered the United States Air Force on September 28, 62 at Amarillo, Texas, and had been assigned to the Minot Air Force Base, rural Minot, since December 16, 1962. His home of record is 2403 Holloway, Midland, Texas. In the spring of 59, he graduated from the Midland High School, Midland, Texas, and in the fall of 59, traveled to France, where he intended to enter a language school to obtain a major in language and literature. He first met Lee Harvey Oswald when he departed from New Orleans, Louisiana, the latter part of September 59, aboard the SS Marion Likes, a freighter. Oswald occupied the same cabin as Lord en route to France. He recalled observing Oswald's passport and visa and noting the name Lee Harvey Oswald on this passport. However, he was unable to recall at the time Oswald's destination as reflected on the visa attached to the passport. He did recall that the freighter stopped at only 2 ports, Les Palais, France, and a port in England, and that Oswald did not disembark at Les Palais, France. In addition to himself and Oswald, there were only 2 other passengers on the freighter, namely a retired U.S. Army major and his wife, names unrecalled, who believed were from the state of Florida. He vaguely recalled they were traveling to either Ireland or Scotland. During the entire trip, he actually had very little conversation with Oswald, as Oswald was a very cynical, surly, unfriendly type of individual who obviously did not desire to associate or engage in conversations with his fellow passengers. On the first day of the trip, Oswald did engage in a very limited amount of conversation. He recalled Oswald told him about that he intended to vacation in Europe with no specific area in Europe being mentioned. He further recalled Oswald saying that he might possibly attend some unknown school in Switzerland. Oswald at no time indicated that he had any intention of going to Russia. He never had any reason to believe Oswald could be an agent of some foreign government or that he was inclined towards communism. He advised Oswald never discussed his background with him other than to state that he was from New Orleans and he just recently discharged from the Marines. Oswald stated that his mother lived in Fort Worth, Texas, and was employed in a drugstore in Fort Worth. Oswald seemed very bitter of the economic conditions of his mother. Oswald, however, did not comment on the economic conditions in the United States or discuss any political views. He recalled that although Oswald never specifically stated he was an atheist, he gave the impression, stating on one occasion that only matter existed and everything came from matter. Oswald appeared to be somewhat of an intellect, having an above-average intelligence, but did not appear to do any reading aboard the ship. Oswald did not appear to be a violent or fanatical individual. The first time he actually knew that Oswald had traveled to Russia was when he was in receipt of a newspaper clipping from his mother, Mrs. Layla K. Lord, 2403 Holloway, Midland, Texas, in which it was reported in a Fort Worth, Texas newspaper, Lee Harvey Oswald, 20-year-old ex-Marine from Fort Worth, Texas, had renounced his American citizenship and had turned in his American passport and requested Russian citizenship. He said he believed this article appeared in the Fort Worth newspaper during November 1959. His mother had recalled the name of Oswald from a letter he, Lord, had written to his mother upon arriving in France, mentioning to her that Oswald had been his roommate in his voyage over. Interesting. All right, now we have another 22477 enclosed FBI report to SAC El Paso. Enclosed are 2 copies of a letter and an envelope received from complainant Bill Lord. Also enclosed are 2 copies of an FD 302 reflecting an interview with Bill Lord on 11/30/63, and 2 copies of an affidavit of Bill Lord as it appears in the Warrant Commission. El Paso Division was requested to contact the complainant, acknowledge his letter, and obtain full details regarding any additional information he wishes to provide. Regarding the allegations set forth in his letter of 2277, Bureau indices reveal that a Billy Joe Lord was in fact the cabin mate of Lee Harvey Oswald during a 2-week ocean voyage from New Orleans to Europe, which took place in 1959. During the course of your interview with the complainant, ensure that he's advised that any fears you may have, contact local authorities. All right, I already got to that. Then we have looks like a note inserted here. Complainant in his letter of 2277 indicates he was a cabin mate of Lee Harvey Oswald. And he just states here a bunch of stuff we already know. And here's the letter again. So yeah, it looks like the rest of this stuff is going to be just a lot of duplication. But so this case of Billy Joe Lord is pretty interesting, right? So Lord is an airman. And he's in a cabin with Oswald, who's an ex-Marine. And the only other people on this goddamn ship is a colonel and his wife. All 4 people military, ex-military. Current military, really, as you could see it. Rather interesting. I'd like to know more about Mr. Billy Lord in the years leading up to this. What was he? He was 22 when they got a hold of him. He wasn't 18 going to college at the time. Oswald was 20, he was 22, so it was 4 years after high school that he was going there. So Billy Joe Lord gets out of high school, he takes 4 years off, and then he goes to France to go to college, but then he doesn't finish college there. He comes back in less than a year. What was Billy Lord doing for those 4 years after high school? Or 3.5 or whatever? Could he have been intelligence? Could have gotten out of high school, gone right into the military? Let's see if we can't pull any more records on Mr. Lord and his life. Billy Joe Lord. And let's pull everything on this colonel and his wife. Because I have a feeling there's more to this story than we're being told. I kind of get the feeling that if Oswald did this in the way that they say he did, that he would have had somebody on there to make sure he made his trip. I just don't trust the idea that the CIA, who would defect him to the Soviet Union, would give him a ticket and say, get on there and just, have a nice trip and we'll see you in a couple of years. I don't think so. No fucking way. No fucking way. I guarantee Oswald had American contacts in Minsk. I guarantee that one of these fucking people who was on this ship with him is most certainly intelligence, keeping tabs on him, making sure he got there, accompanying him. There's no other way to look at it. So, additional information. Billy Joe Lord, the 4 years before this trip, and what he did after high school. And, so interesting stuff. Let me see what I can't dig up. Maybe we'll do some more on Billy Joe Lord tomorrow, but probably not. We're probably going to move on to something else. But thanks for tuning in, guys. A little bit shorter of an episode, but I'll be back tomorrow with something new. Thanks.